The finding of the COVID inquiry, just hearing about what's been going on at the COVID inquiry, has it put you off ever voting Tory again? So yesterday it was revealed that Matt Hancock said during the pandemic that he should decide who lives or dies. The former NHS England chief executive, Sir Simon Stevens, told the inquiry Hancock took the opinion that he, rather than, say, the medical profession or the public, should ultimately decide who should live or die. And it's just capped just an extraordinary week at the inquiry where we've heard so many different shocking things. Let me just take you through it if I can. And the first image, I think, for us is actually a hairdryer, because it turns out that at some point during COVID, Boris Johnson said, could you blast it up your nose to cure the illness? So that particular suggestion made us think of Donald Trump.
So supposing we hit the body with a tremendous, whether it's ultraviolet or just very powerful light, right? And then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute.
Knocks it out. Maybe you could inject disinfectant. What happened here? Well, apparently Boris Johnson had found a video on YouTube of a man using a hairdryer to blow up his nose and asked if that would blow the virus away. He went to the chief medical advisors to say, look at this video. Then we heard from these two. This is Dominic Cummings here. Cummings, essentially Boris Johnson's number two. And he's very rude about Helen McNamara, who, by the way, is the number two in the civil service, calling her the C word, saying he would lead her in handcuffs from number 10 if he had to. She responded yesterday by saying, gosh, it was a macho culture. Gosh, it was toxic. Women were overlooked. And she also, by the way, mentioned Hancock, saying, she'd said, are you okay? He said, I'm like a batsman. Look at this. I'm like a batsman. They throw the balls at me and I bat them away. That was Hancock. So at the heart of it are these portraits of different ministers. Hancock, lies, obsession with the media, incompetence. This is Cummings saying you've got to think about binning him. His uselessness is still killing God knows how many. So insults traded back and forth. You almost forget at times we've got a serious pandemic going on that's killing people. And then here on a WhatsApp message, you get a reminder. Cummings says we've got to force the pace. We're looking at between 100 and 500,000 deaths between the optimistic and pessimistic scenarios. So he was warning. But Boris, on the other hand, was saying, look, the old should accept their fate. And that's been the inquiry this week. Oh, my goodness. What do you think of it, Martin?
Idiots. Absolute idiots, every one of them. And the question is that you said is that would you vote Tory again? I never have. So I don't need to vote for them again. I've never voted Tory, and there's a good reason for that. I just think that I can't... All the stories, all the horrible sort of quotes that you're mentioning there that Dominic Cummings has said and who said what and what's been said, I believe every single bit of it. And I know that some people won't, but I truly believe.
I was going to say, you had a hard old COVID as well.
Yeah, I did, because I had to shield. So because I've got cerebral palsy, even though I'm no less or more fit than your average Joe, and my disability doesn't impact my health that way, I'm still put under an umbrella because cerebral palsy, the spectrum that it comes within. So I had to shield, basically. And what that meant is that I came back to Glasgow to live with my mum and dad. They're in their 60s, but they had to shield. Do you know what I mean? Because I was shielding. So when you hear these sort of stories and the way they were behaving during COVID times, it just takes me back, and it reminds me about how difficult it was for me and my family at that point.
But you had the Scottish Government handling COVID, and arguably they were more serious and more strict, but they had the same outcome.
Yeah, but it also felt...
Same deaths.
Yeah, but it felt to me as though what the Scottish Government were doing at the time was they were waiting to see what was happening, you know, what was coming from London, and then 2 weeks later, if it was going well, they would implement it.
Well,
that's what it felt like at the time.
Well, I heard it was 2 hours earlier because they'd hear it was coming and then they would pre-announce it with gold-plated. But who knows? Angela, let's go back to what we've seen. It's been awful what we've seen at this inquiry.
The optics are horrendous because at the heart of this are thousands of people who died as a consequence of COVID. There are people who, to this day, you know, the bereavement is shocking and terrible and are living with that grief. And I always think at the heart of this, we forget all that, OK? So I'm not going to add the horrible but, as if that sort of legitimises what I'm going to say next. I'm putting that fact out there. Second fact is an unprecedented health crisis for which the government was manifestly not ready for. Would a Labour government or other government have been ready? Were the plans in place? Did the Whitehall blob have it in place? The same outcome may have happened. The other thing is, things are said in context context in a very, very inflammatory situation behind the scenes and off the record. There are a lot of axes to grind. There are some deplorable things that have been said. Matt Hancock, who we know famously broke COVID rules whilst telling us to do all the things like shielding and stuff. Boris Johnson is not a natural interventionist. He didn't take the virus seriously at first. I didn't take the virus seriously at first. I remember being on this programme in February 2020 before we shifted online saying to you, I'm going to curtsy with people, Jeremy, I'm not going to shake hands, because I didn't understand the scale of it, OK? So I'm not mitigating, I'm just explaining. Would it stop me voting Tory again? Absolutely not. I think there were things that are terrible that have come out of this inquiry. I think that things that are shocking that we need to condemn them for. But I also think, as equally, just as that, there are a lot of axes to grind. Dominic Cummings, the master of the dark arts, who clearly, once he was jettisoned from Downing Street, has got a vengeful mandate there behind this. And I think that it's like saying to me, would I ever vote Labour again because of Jeremy Corbyn? That was a set of circumstances. Let a government prove itself on its mettle and what it does.
Let's take a call from Robin in Gloucestershire. What do you think? Are you going to not vote Conservative again because of this week, Robin?
Well, I'm with Martin. I've never voted for them. But the key thing for me is that incredible interrogation on SAS, Who Dares Wins. That interrogation with Matt Hancock showed more essentially what's wrong with him and what's wrong with this.
Why? Because all that happened was this woman who looked like Liz Truss was shouting, "You're a weasel-faced C-word" at him. I don't know what that proved. It almost made me feel sorry for him, actually, Robin.
No, I would never. No, he's kind of insulated. He's like Teflon. This man, the lights are on or hardly on, but nobody's in. The essential, authentic self isn't there.
Well, I tell you what I would say is that we do see he's somebody promoted for loyalty, not competence, because he's very loyal to the masters. And I wonder whether we need to look at politics, Robin, again and ask why we're not getting decent people in there.
Well, along with Angela saying that, of course, there's a huge vendetta from Cummings, but his anger and his reaction doesn't make it less true.
No, fair enough. Well, maybe you can say you're vindicated, Martin. You never have and you never will vote Conservative.
No, never, ever. Never. I think the damage has been done, basically, and I feel like they've fallen on their own swords.
But you were born in 1987, and that was the year of Margaret Thatcher's third election victory.
Yeah. I think when you
wish you'd lived under Thatcher?
No, I think when you're brought up in Glasgow, a lot of people in working class Glasgow don't have a lot of time for Margaret Thatcher for obvious reasons in terms of...
Well, she wouldn't have had 12 parties in Downing Street if she'd been Prime Minister,
most
that's
definitely
for sure.
not. And the difficulty is absolutely respect what you're saying, Martin, because you've grown into an adult. You can't be expected to know what you were knowing as a baby. But when there is that entrenched culture, this sort of confirms rather than persuades. So you were already offside with the Tories, and then this comes along and it almost kind of confirms a belief. Whereas I think it's a kind of dangerous way to think like that.
It'd be interesting to hear from viewers who were staunchly Tory, but this week has just broken them. I don't know if that's you. Do give us a call, 0207 862 22.